Good day, viewers. Welcome back to the Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio and my friend, Andrew, where no God is required for a life of love, joy, peace, fulfillment, meaning, and purpose in life. And that good life is one guided by reason and motivated by love. Well, it's good to have my friend Andrew back on my show again. We've done a show a few months ago. It was basically an interview of Andrew. We did discuss the importance of activism and what I like to say, missionary work and evangelism for reaching people that are unenlightened. So yeah, we're going to discuss activism. So today we're going to just talk about experiences with atheist activism. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out what we do Saturday mornings now. We used to do Sunday mornings, and our experiences. And I'm hoping that our fellow atheists will listen to this, watch it, and get a little fired up and see the importance of talking to believers and how to talk to them. So maybe we can give a few pointers. But basically, Andrew and I go out on Saturday mornings, sometimes Sunday mornings. First of all, we do what many other atheists do in this city of Austin. We go out and feed homeless people, which is a very rewarding thing. So we meet under the bridge in downtown Austin and pass out bananas. And they love oranges, don't they? Oranges and bananas are their favorite. And any clothing that we have given to me from my very nice clients, whether they're Christians or atheists, they give me clothing and we pass them out to the homeless. But after we pass out food and clothing to the homeless people, we go to particular churches. And I've discussed this before in my atheist evangelism series. I've had a two-part series or three-part series on reaching out to those that are unenlightened. So today we're going to just talk about our experiences, and some of these stories will be very entertaining and some will be very enlightening to, hopefully, to my viewers. And before I turn Andrew loose, when we have some dialogue here, we're going to discuss what we did this very morning. This is a Saturday here in early December in Austin. We met, as we usually do, under the bridge, and we passed out some food. And we always have good dialogue with several of the Christians out there, and also a lot of the homeless as well. So we went to a particular church which Andrew has a lot of experience in, which is the Seventh-day Adventist Church, because they have their Sabbath on Saturday. So we usually go into what they call the Sabbath school and introduce ourselves, talk to the pastor and so forth. So we had some really good talks today, didn't we, with the pastor at that church?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was. I thought it was productive. Yeah.
Yeah. Very friendly pastor. So he invited us into his office. And I did not say I was an atheist. And this is such a new thing. I know it's on the edge to think of going into their environment. And both of our backgrounds, Andrew and I, we have strong backgrounds in Christianity. So it's really not very intimidating. They're people just like us. And that's our message, that we atheists are good people. And we're trying to put a face on atheism to believers, because most of them, as I've said many times before in my episodes, are lied to. There are many misconceptions about us, and it's up to us to go out and let them know and let them see that we are moral and ethical, we have love and kindness and so forth, and we're happy, all without belief in a God. So let's discuss what we did today, and I want to talk about some of the arguments that we get in these Sunday school classes. Today was a lot of fun. It was so much fun. So we talked to the pastor first, and I think he started giving us his testimony, didn't he?
Yes. Definitely an interesting guy. I mean, he was South African, and he told us he went from being a white supremacist to being a bodyguard for Nelson Mandela.
Wow!
So that's interesting right there. If we had more time, we should have could have learned some more. Also, he was a government agent and a sniper.
Yeah.
Who knew karate. Interesting guy. And now he's a church pastor. So So yeah, we basically introduced ourselves. I mean, we were honest. I mean, just we didn't tell everything about ourselves, but David went in and said, "Yeah, I'm a skeptic," and I went in telling them the truth that I was a former Seventh-day Adventist in my teens and early 20s, and I was bringing my friend David, who's a skeptic, and I told him, one of the things I really enjoyed about the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the great food. They have potlucks a lot, and this particular church had a free breakfast. And what's unique about Seventh-day Adventists compared to other Christian denominations, not only do they go to church on Saturday because they believe, rightfully so, that Saturday is the actual original seventh day, that the Bible intended, to be the day of worship. That's the same as what Jews, it's from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. But also another thing that's unique about them is they're a lot healthier, more health conscious than most Christian denominations, and many of them are vegetarian or vegan, although they're not strict about that. But so you're always going to get a lot of good healthy food when you visit Seventh-day Adventists, and so we didn't really get in too much of an in-depth conversation with the pastor. He showed us around a little bit, nice guy. And the thing is, I want to stress, like David does, that we don't hate Christians. We're actually, we both recognize that a lot of them are good people with good intentions, and they want to do good in the world, and so you just have to give them the benefit of the doubt that way, and when you're talking to them. And when we got into the Sabbath school class, I kind of jokingly say that this time we hijacked it a little bit because we've sat in on several Sunday school classes and a couple of Sabbath school classes with different churches, and usually we'll just kind of we'll wait for little opportunities to subtly ask some questions that will kind of get them thinking. Plant some seeds, introduce some ideas they haven't heard before that are kind of challenging to them, but not in an aggressive or hostile sort of way. Just ways to kind of get them thinking a little bit, and then that usually opens the door so that after the class is over, one or two or more of them will hang out with us, and sometimes we can have a really long, in-depth conversation with them where we get into more of the meat of why we're skeptical, why we're atheist, agnostic, or whatever. But this time we pretty much derailed their whole class.
Too much coffee.
David had a little too much coffee this morning.
I was flying. I had 2 cups. Yeah.
But that's okay because they didn't seem too mad about it. Although you could tell the instructor was getting a little exasperated because obviously, their plan was they wanted to stick to a certain lesson plan for the class, and they didn't get to do that because they were talking to us the whole time. Yeah. But, I think, I don't think anybody that we encountered there is going to come away from that experience being mad at us for it. Because to them, from their perspective, they're looking at it like, okay, this is our opportunity to minister to non-believers. Hey, they even said up front to us, hey, it's a good thing you guys came. It's a good thing we can talk to you. They want to talk to us and we want to talk to them. So, hey, it's a win-win.
Yes, And excuse me, all the times that Andrew and I have gone into particular churches on Sundays or Saturdays, very seldom have we ever irritated someone so much as to remove us or kick us out. I've only been kicked out once or twice.
They've never kicked me out.
Never kicked Andrew.
It must be this guy.
Yeah, it must be me when I'm on coffee. Yeah. But they're usually very receptive, and they do enjoy us being there. And in their minds, though, and I get this so much, and you do too in your activism. To them, it is divine providence. That is why we were there. They think that we're hungry and searching. So what I do, and Andrew and I have different personalities, and it works. And that's the thing about when you go out as an activist. You got to be yourself. You just got to relax and be yourself. My approach is a little bit different. Being a former evangelist, Christian evangelist, I just hit them right away. Like today, she was going over the book of Job, and I already told the people before we got into the class that I was a skeptic. I didn't say the word atheist, but I think they figured it out. At the end of the class, they already knew. So I always say I am a skeptic. I like to know what people believe, why they believe it, and how do they know if they're saying it's true. I just am fascinated by people's belief systems. So she was teaching the book of, was it Job?
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you've read the book of Job, it's pretty immoral. It's harsh, just like all the other scriptures in the Old Testament. So as she began to teach on that, I just began to ask questions, and then Andrew started his questions. So we did derail them somewhat, and we got into different topics, but none of them were really that angry. Did you sense any anger?
No, I didn't sense anger. I only sensed a little bit of exasperation on the part of the instructor, just because she had a lesson plan that she wanted to, that she obviously had thought she was going to get through, and she didn't get a chance to get through it. So maybe next week they might be when they meet again next week, they might be, well, now that those atheists are gone, we can finish our lesson plan. But I talked to her a little bit afterwards, and we broke into different. You talked to a couple people, I talked to her and a couple other people for a while, and I'll give you an example of something that I don't know if I'd consider it a breakthrough, but I got an opportunity to make a point that I haven't made before when we've gone to these classes, is because a lot of them were making arguments that atheists have heard a million times before, that are just really weak arguments, arguments like, well, if you just prayed, you'd get, God will answer your prayers. Or arguments like, well, if you just look at creation and what we see in the world, that's proof of God. And of course, that's our proof. These kind of facile, childish arguments. And so it gave me the opportunity, instead of addressing each specific one of these very weak arguments, which would have taken hours, really, I basically just said, I had a chance to say to the whole class, listen, let me put myself in your shoes. What is your goal? Your goal is to save souls, is to bring people to Christ so that they can experience eternal life instead of eternal death or eternal torture. Okay, well, if that's the case, you want to be prepared. You want to know what the best counter arguments are. You want to know what the atheists and skeptics are saying. It's kind of like if you're playing chess, the person who wins the chess game is the one who's able to think the most moves ahead. Or if you're in a court of law, the lawyer, a good lawyer who wins a case is the lawyer who knows what the other side is going to say. They know the other side's best arguments. It's like Sun Tzu's Art of War. Know your enemy. Know their strategy. Know their arguments. And it's so clear when you talk to these Christians, they have no clue that most everything they've said has been debunked 100 times over. So we're introducing ideas to them that most of them have never heard. And so I tell them, listen, if your goal is to win souls, is to save souls, you need to be prepared for what the counter arguments are. And so I try to make the argument to them from looking at it from their perspective. If you're as if it's helpful to them, in that you find out what the counter. When you say that creation is proof of God, find out why scientists don't believe that. Why do scientists say it's not proof of God? Before you tell people that just looking around and seeing creation proves God, find out why people don't believe that first. So hopefully that got through to some of them in a way where it's not that I expect them to immediately lose their faith, but if I can at least inspire them to start researching what our counter-arguments are and getting to know them, from their perspective, it should strengthen their faith. They'd be better Christians, better theists, if they know what atheists are saying. But from my perspective, it will get them thinking a little more, get them thinking more skeptically, get them, Yeah. So these are ways we can plant some seeds, and we can frame it in a way that it's in their own best interest. As someone who wants to save souls, it's in your interest to find out what the counter arguments are. If you're going to defeat those arguments, find out what they are first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really had very little knowledge of the natural world, mostly. Mm-hmm. They didn't understand the scientific methodology. They really had a lack of understanding of what scientists actually do. So we try to explain to them briefly what science does. But usually when my way, when I talk to believers, I like to challenge them with questions about the basics of life, the important things of life, like love, happiness, and so forth. And I use the same questions I use with many Christians from all different backgrounds, or Muslims, for that matter, Hindus, or whatever. So when I begin to ask them questions like, like when I was talking to the woman who came from my background, remember the Pentecostal lady, when she was talking about tongues and how she knows that was a deception of Satan, why people from the Pentecostal movement believe in speaking in tongues. And so I tried to explain to the class, and there must have been over 20 people there, I'm assuming.
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly, yeah. And I began to explain to them, which I've talked about here on my show, the difference of belief and knowledge. And I've tried to tell all of them, and I had an audience. I mean, I said there is belief in something and actual real knowledge. And asking them, how do you know any of this stuff you're saying is true? The very basic questions that I ask them all the time. And we got all kinds of answers. So this one sweet, very elderly lady said, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she says, he's in my heart, I know he lives. My Savior lives, my Savior lives. She stood up and she said, let me explain to you. She walked off to the corner of the room, sweet lady, and began to sing 2 or 3 hymns and songs.
I think it was just one, but it seemed like it was 2 or 3. It seemed like it.
And of course I didn't want to laugh, but here's a sweet lady who believes that this Savior God lives inside of her heart. This invisible spirit, like Casper, the friendly ghost, came into her and changed her life and makes her happy, and moral. And so she began to sing and sing, and must have gone on for 3, 4, 5 minutes. But some of the other people began
and she was hitting some American Idol high notes at the end there.
She was good. Yeah, she was really good. So, and when she was finished,
she could be the next Susan Boyle, folks.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. There you go. So she was really believing that this was evidence of a God. So we kept hammering very nicely. How do you know what you're saying is true? How do you know this is real? So I did ask, and I'd start talking about happiness and joy and love and how it's innate in humans and so forth. We don't necessarily need a God to have love and happiness. And that Pentecostal lady, I asked her, I said, are you saying that you have greater happiness than I have? And I can't remember how I asked the question, but she said, you were there as a witness. We should have videoed this. And she said, as many Christians tell me, your happiness is not real. It's fake. And I just went, whoa. I said, wow. And I said, you don't really know me, and you're telling me I have any happiness. The happiness I have is a lie from Satan. So I get that quite often. So what I saw today were people grasping with anything they could think of to demonstrate or prove that we needed this God of theirs and this religion. So I'm always thinking, and I know a lot of viewers are thinking, why do you do that? Do you really think it's effective? Do you think it's going to actually change a believer to an unbeliever? And why do you do it? And I've gone over that many times in my show, that I believe that the more secular society is a healthier society. I think most of us understand that with quantitative evidence and data. We know that. So I was asking Andrew at the end of the show if he thought it was a very productive 1 hour talking to these believers. So, and you had an answer for me. You said there was a gentleman sitting next to me and some others. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. There's no way to know for certain, but I think you can almost guarantee that any opportunity you have to plant a few seeds like that, you can call them seeds of doubt or just seeds of thought, get them thinking, introduce ideas to them they haven't heard before is a good thing. But specifically, I mentioned to David that there was a young gentleman sitting right next to him that he was facing away from, and I was watching him, and he didn't speak at all during the class, but it's kind of like I could see the wheels turning in his mind, and you know it's off, and so David and I could have been having a really positive effect just on that one individual, because often, you know, you have to look at these situations like it's not just the specific people you're talking to, you're having the dialogue with, it's also the people around who are observing the dialogue and non-participants who are there observing the conversation. You're potentially having a positive influence on them as well, and inspiring them to think more skeptically. So yeah, David didn't see him, but I did, and this is just intuition or whatever. I can't prove anything, but I have a feeling he was really you really got him thinking during that class. And going back to our superstar vocalist earlier. Basically her argument was a variation of, you know, the Bible said it, I believe it, and that settles it kind of thing. And that's what kind of inspired me to make the argument about, you know, yeah, that may be good enough for you, but that's not going to save souls for you. If you want to convert skeptics, you're going to have to give them something a lot better than that. Sure. You know, so hopefully if that just gets the people in this class realizing that they're going to have to come up with some better arguments, then that might get them. That might help push them on the road to a healthy skepticism as well. You know that's just my hunch. I hope based on some research I've done, and hopefully that's the case. Yeah. I mean, and like I said, anything is better than nothing. I think what we did today was productive, more productive than most of the churches we've gone to. And, you know, so, you know, you just do what you can. And I think if a lot more people, a lot more atheists were doing what we're doing, I think it would be very positive, very helpful. And I wish more atheists were doing what we're doing.
Because like what I say all the time, most believers are lied to about us. They're told that we're immoral, we're unhappy, we're sad, we're nihilist, and so forth. So I was telling Andrew the story of one of my clients. I'm a personal trainer who's a fellow atheist, and her encounter with some Jehovah's Witness preachers the day after Thanksgiving. So she went down to a small rural community in southeast Texas, down on the coast. And as I was training her last week, I asked her how her Thanksgiving was. So she told me the story of sitting in the room with her mother, who's very Christian and who knows that she is an atheist. But my client, my friend, is a particular atheist that is closeted, like the majority of atheists are. Her and her boyfriend both. But the two preachers came knocking on her door, and she thought, I think I'm going to answer it and go out and talk to them. And she was very excited because she has to listen to me always talking to her when I'm training her about our atheist outreach and activism, what Andrew and I do, and others. And so she thought, wonder what David would think. I'm going to go out there and talk to them instead of slamming the door in their face. So she told me the story. She opened the door. And of course, it was two of the elders from the Jehovah's Witness church. Very nice. Most of them are very nice. She said she walked outside, shook their hands, smiled at them and say hi, welcome, and so forth. And they began to go with the questions that they normally have, like, do you believe in heaven? Are you going to heaven? And her answer was, I don't believe in heaven. And they said, why? And great answer. She said, there's no evidence. I'll believe anything to be true, but you got to provide evidence. And then they asked her about Jehovah. Do you believe in Jehovah? And she said, no, I lack belief in a God. And they were completely confused and dumbfounded was the word that she said. It just took them by surprise. They're not used to unbelievers coming out boldly and saying, no, I do not believe in your God, and smiling about it instead of slamming the door in their face. And they said, why do you not believe in Jehovah? And I loved her answer. She told me this. She said, well, number one, there's no evidence. And number two, I don't need it. I'm a happy, happy atheist. I don't need it. And I said, wonderful. If we could just see the importance of letting believers know that many of us are happy And many of us do ethical and moral things for other people because they don't know. They're lied to about us, and these misconceptions are very prevalent within the Christian community. So that made me a very happy camper. So the reason Andrew and I and others who perform atheist activism, maybe in very different ways because they do it their way, and it's awesome because we're doing something, right? We're just not sitting here. We're actually trying to make this world better. We believe that there are those people out there, as I've said many times before, that are on the edge or on the fringe that have these doubts already, and they don't know until we tell them. And I think, and I believe Andrew agrees with me, that the more of us that just say simple statements like, you know, God bless you. Well, thank you, but I'm an atheist. The guy that was on the street corner today at the stoplight, what ministry is that here in Austin? Well, they're taking up offerings for their ministry, and I don't remember the name of it. But I encounter these people quite often, and they're really nice, but they're asking for donations and money for their church ministry. So I rolled the window down, and I just began to let him know, hey, we're atheists, but you don't need a God to be good, and so forth. And he was kind of blown away. And so I said, we're doing the same thing you are, but we're doing it for atheism and secular humanism. So he got a little earful, but I think it's good for them to see that we're ethical and moral and happy people, and we are out there. We're growing in numbers. I do want to discuss with you, Andrew, something that you and I kind of had a brainstorm or epiphany a few weeks ago of something I really would like to do with Andrew, with a few other people. I talked to the very famous Joe Semecki, a very popular activist here for atheism in Austin, and we met with him and talked with him. And I had this thought, a few weeks ago, because it's quite hard for us to go into churches in their environment without being too offensive or disingenuous. We want to be honest. And it's almost like our hands are tied behind our back sometimes. We just can't really come right out and let them have it, but nice, but really let them know the other side of the story, right? An alternative to their belief system. So I thought, I know a lot of other activists have done this, but they've set up, they've hit the streets with signs and billboards. So I thought it would be good if we just set up a table in a public setting with posters. And posters would read, "Ask an atheist." And the other poster would read, "Secular humanism, good without God." I want those two, atheists and secular humanists, together. Because as we know, atheism is our lack of belief, but our worldview and philosophy is secular humanism, being good without a God. So I began to call around different parks and recreation areas in rural Austin area. We want to kind of get outside of Austin where there are more, I would say, conservative people, maybe more Christians, and put a face on atheism. Let these people know and answer their questions. So, Andrew, what do you think about that? Do you think I'm nuts? You think it's going to work? Because we're going to try it pretty soon.
Yeah, you know, it's funny when David first shared that idea with me. I thought it was a great idea, and I think I showed you my what I had written down from several years ago, where I pretty much had a similar idea, only with progressive activism, going out into rural conservative communities and setting up just info tables. And I couldn't get anybody really interested in doing that, unfortunately. I think it would have been productive. And when David, shared his idea of doing that for atheism, I'm like, yeah, sign me up. I'm on board. Let's do it.
Good. Yeah.
So I'd love to give it a shot. And we thought about, what are the cons? We know what we think the pros of doing that are. The cons, what are the cons? Well, people might yell at us. People might, wag their finger at us, tell us we're going to hell. There's a very, very, very slim chance somebody might want to be violent, but that's very slim. I'm not worried about it. I think the pros far outweigh the cons of giving it a shot, going out there and talking to people in a constructive and civil way, and introducing ideas to them. I'm sure I don't need to tell other atheists that the amount of ignorance out there is just astounding. And it's only going to get worse if we don't go out there and try and inform people in some way. And so I think it's a great idea. And again, I just wish more people were doing it. Dialogue is good. Sharing differing views is good. That maybe they'll have an argument that I haven't heard before, or David hasn't heard before. That's good. And anything that helps all of us get closer to the truth. We need to share ideas with each other that we may disagree with. We need to have those dialogues, even ideas that we may think are offensive. We need to talk with those people and share the dialogue. That's the only way we can progress. Otherwise, society is just going to get more and more polarized, whether it be left-right polarization or theist-atheist polarization. It's just going to get worse if we don't go out there and dialogue with these people.
Oh, especially now, since the election.
Right.
Here we are, what is today, December, I don't know, what is today, 4th or 5th? I don't even know what today is. But it's a Saturday in early December. But since the election, President-elect, and you see who he's choosing for his cabinet, it's a pretty scary thing. We see...
and his vice president is basically a theocrat.
That's what I was about to say. We're looking at a possible movement toward theocracy. So there are wonderful atheist and humanist organizations out there that we have to support. I mean, Freedom from Religion Foundation, American Atheists, American Humanists, different groups that are standing up against this. So I just personally can't just sit here and believe, well, people will figure this out, that we're going backwards instead of forwards. And why Christian white rule America may be the greatest impediment to progress in this country. We're going to have to tie religion in there. It's very pervasive. It affects people's thinking. It affects how they vote. So those of us that are more liberal and into human rights and so forth, we need to stand up and talk to people and educate them. And what I find when I talk to believers, all kinds of believers from different religions, it's like Andrew's already said, there's a lot of ignorance out there. They do not know even what an atheist believes or doesn't believe. They have no idea who is going to tell these people. As I say all the time, they're not going to get it from Fox News. They're not going to get it from their preachers Sunday or Saturday mornings, okay, about the truth. About us. They're going to hear lies about us. So we have to, no one else is going to tell them. We're going to have to encourage them to start thinking for themselves and start challenging their thinking and teach them what critical thinking is and to ask them hard questions using the Socratic method, which is hard for me, being a former evangelist, but I'm learning, right, Andrew? I'm getting a little better.
Yeah.
So yeah, challenging them with hard questions. So, and of course, we get all the time, well, you guys are here for a reason, divine providence. We get that all the time too, but it's okay if they think that. So,
sure. But
we're there sowing seeds, and we are very nice. Most of them are nice to us. We haven't been hurt yet. We haven't anything thrown at us yet, but there's really nothing to be afraid of for my fellow atheists out there. When you talk to Christians or believers, I've never really had anybody threaten me, a couple times. But that's all the hundreds or many hundreds of people I've talked to. And I'm sure you could say the same thing. Most of them are going to be nice. They're just going to pray for you and try to fix you. But you're going to run across people that are going to think about this, and we don't know the effect. We have no idea. But I believe that as we sow seeds, some of these seeds will produce some skepticism in these people. There are some people that are already thinking about this. So that's why we do this, and that's why I'd like to encourage everybody just to get out there, or at least support people that are activists. Let's make our world better and keep us secular. We got to go more secular. We had enough religion. That doesn't work. We've got to move secular. So.
I think and I've been saying this for years, we can't afford to be complacent. We can't, too many of us for too long have sat back and thought, well, society will eventually move slowly but surely in the right direction. Well, as we saw from November 8th, it's for every step society may take forward, it can very easily slide backwards again if we sit back and be complacent. We can't afford complacency. We got to get out there and take action. Mm-hmm. Be activists.
Definitely, definitely. All right. Do you want to touch on anything else before we close?
On this topic, as you know, we've always got hours of stuff we could talk about, but I don't want to bore your viewers unless you have a specific topic you wanted to.
No, I really just want to touch on what we do, why we do it, and again, the experiences that we have with believers. And it's really interesting that the arguments they give us when presented with tough questions, and we hear the same answers all the time. We never hear anything new. It's the same thing. You know, look at nature, there's the evidence of God. Or anecdotal evidences, my life transformation is proof of God. Even though we explain to them that anecdotal evidences doesn't necessarily prove there's a God. People change all the time.
And I thought of something. Another thing I want to tell people. Please stop defriending or blocking or banning people from your social media just because they say something you disagree with. Instead, look at it as an opportunity to have those important discussions. When you unfriend them, ban them, block them, you just make it worse. You don't make it better. Please don't stop doing that. If anything, if we learned anything from November 8th, hopefully that's something we learned from it. You know.
Well said. Well said. All right. Well, I think we're finished. We can pick this up some other time. We're going to go back out next Saturday to another church. And we are going to, I would say back in my preacher years, when I was a preacher, I used to say, pray for us. Pray that God would lead us to the right people. So now as a activist for atheism and secular humanism, we just think. And so y'all be thinking about us and support us, think about us, and encourage other activists out there that are doing work out there in the fields and standing up against the religious right. And support these atheist activist groups, charitable foundations that are secular. They need our help. There's many Christian organizations out there, but most believers do not understand that there are organizations out there that are secular and humanistic and atheistic that are very good companies and organizations that do wonderful things to help people. So we need to support all the beautiful secular organizations out there. So I just want to encourage you, if you're a secular humanist atheist and you're watching this, to find one of these organizations and support them. Atheist Experience Show, Atheist Community of Austin right here in Austin, many other wonderful places and groups of secular humanists and atheists that do great work. So find someone to support, encourage, and let's work together to make this country secular, and let's progress ahead. We'll see a healthier and happier society without supernatural belief. So, Andrew, thanks again.
Except this supernatural belief right here.
Yeah, we want to keep this guy, our Lord and Savior.
This is the one true Lord right here.
That's him. That's right. Now, by the way, before we close, they did say that today. They kept talking about the one true God. Yeah, we get that all the time. So, thanks again, my friend, for coming back on.
Thank you, sir.
And we will hit it again next Saturday, back to another church and having great talks and dialogue with believers. So thanks for watching The Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio. Have a great day. If you like what you saw today, hit your like button, subscribe to my channel. Have a wonderful day.